The first thing you noticed inside the facility was the silence, not the absence of sound. Machines hummed, servos whispered, robotic arms clicked with mechanical precision, but the absence of human noise. No chatter, no laughter, no mistakes. Every step echoed too cleanly across the polished white floor, as if the building itself demanded discipline. The doors sealed shut behind her with a hydraulic sigh. Colonel Ava Morgan didn't slow her pace. Above her, a ceiling of reinforced glass stretched the length of the building. Sunlight filtered through steel lattices and LED panels, bathing the massive hall in cold blue, white light. The space felt more like a surgical theater than a factory, immaculate, controlled, unforgiving. Rows of robotic arms moved in perfect synchronization along the central assembly line, each one performing a single task with surgical accuracy. Sparks flashed briefly as metal fused to metal. Laser calibrators traced invisible lines along a missile's sleek gray body. The weapon stretched nearly the length of the room, resting on a yellow rail system like a sleeping predator. This was Site Atlas, a black, budget weapons facility that officially didn't exist. Most people who worked here never saw the entire process. Engineers were compartmentalized. Soldiers were rotated. Clearances were layered so deeply that even senior officers only understood fragments of the operation. And yet, as Colonel Morgan walked straight down the central aisle, every sensor, every camera, every access panel recognized her instantly. Green lights flickered on as she passed. Engineers in white hazmat suits paused just long enough to glance up from their work. Their eyes followed her, confused, curious, uneasy. A woman in standard camouflage didn't belong in this section. Not without an escort, not without a lab coat, not without someone asking questions, but no one stopped her. Two armed guards at the far end of the hall straightened instinctively. They hadn't been briefed on her arrival. No announcement had been made, no email, no protocol update, no warning. Still, something about her presence made hesitation feel dangerous. Colonel Morgan's boots struck the floor with calm certainty. She didn't look left or right. She didn't slow to admire the technology that had taken billions of dollars and decades of research to perfect. She'd seen it before. At Station 12, a senior technician raised his hand slightly, as if unsure whether he was allowed to speak. Ma'am," he began. She stopped. The entire assembly line seemed to pause with her. Morgan turned her head just enough to meet his eyes. Her expression was neutral, unreadable, sharpened by years of command in places where hesitation got people killed. "Yes," she said. The technician swallowed. "This area is restricted. We're assembling. I know what you're assembling," she replied calmly. Her gaze shifted to the missile's guidance section. "Your torque values are off by 0.3% on the stabilizer ring. It won't fail immediately. It'll drift under sustained heat." The technician froze. Slowly, he checked his tablet, his face drained of color. That's not possible," he muttered. "Those readings aren't visible unless you have full system clearance." Morgan finished. Around them, engineers stopped, pretending not to listen. A murmur rippled down the line. In the distance, a group of soldiers in camouflage, site security, began to move closer. One of them, a captain by the look of his insignia, narrowed his eyes. "Ma'am," he called out, voice firm, "you're going to need to step away from the equipment." Morgan didn't raise her voice. She didn't even turn toward him fully. Instead, she reached into her breast pocket and produced a slim black badge marked unassuming. She handed it to the technician. "Scan it." The technician hesitated, then complied. The screen flashed once, then every monitor along the assembly line went dark. A half-second later, they rebooted, this time displaying a single line of text in bold white letters. Authorized, Command Override Alpha. An audible alert chimed throughout the facility. Every robotic arm powered down simultaneously. The captain stopped dead in his tracks. Morgan turned now, facing the room. "I didn't come here to observe," she said evenly. "I came because something in this building is wrong, and if we launch it like this, people will die who were never meant to." The silence that followed was absolute. For the first time since the facility was built, Site Atlas waited on a single human decision, and no one dared question the woman who had just taken control of it. No one spoke. The alert chime faded, leaving behind a vacuum so thick it felt physical. Robotic arms hung motionless above the missile like frozen sentinels. Conveyor belts stood still. Screens glowed softly, displaying diagnostics no one was authorized to see except her. Colonel Ava Morgan stood at the center of it all, hands relaxed at her sides, as if she hadn't just shut down one of the most classified weapons programs in the country. The captain recovered first. "This facility is under active production orders," he said, forcing authority back into his voice. "You don't have jurisdiction here, ma'am. Even a colonel needs—" Morgan finally turned fully toward him. "Captain," she said calmly, reading his name tag without effort, "you're responsible for perimeter security, not command verification. If you'd like to continue this conversation, I suggest you check the insignia on my badge carefully." She took the badge back from the technician and clipped it openly to her uniform. The captain's breath caught. Silver oak leaves sat beneath a black command stripe. Above them, small, almost easy to miss, was a symbol most officers only saw once in their careers. Joint Strategic Weapons Command. The captain's posture stiffened. He snapped to attention before he realized he was doing it. "Yes, ma'am." Around the hall, engineers exchanged nervous looks. One by one, they removed their headsets. A senior systems lead stepped forward, his hands still gloved, his voice measured but strained. "Colonel Morgan," he said, choosing each word carefully, "with respect, this program has passed every internal and external review. Any deviation now will delay deployment by months." 37 days, Morgan corrected, and 12 hours. The engineer blinked. "That's classified. So is the thermal drift issue in your guidance core," she replied. "The one you buried in supplemental data because it didn't trigger a failure threshold yet." She stepped closer to the missile, placing a gloved hand against its cold metal skin. "This weapon isn't designed for short engagements," she continued. "It's meant for sustained flight under extreme heat and electronic interference. Under those conditions, your stabilizer drift compounds slowly, invisibly." She looked back at them. "Until it doesn't miss by inches, it misses by miles." A murmur rippled through the engineers. Tablets came up, data scrolled faster now. One technician whispered an expletive under his breath. The senior engineer frowned. "Even if that's true, why wasn't this flagged earlier?" Morgan's expression hardened, not with anger, but with something colder. "Because your simulations assume best-case environments," she said. "Real battlefields don't." She paused, then added, "I've watched weapons like this fail in the field. I've watched teams trust them." No one missed the implication. A young engineer finally spoke. "Ma'am, how would you even know what happens after deployment?" Morgan met his gaze. "Because I was there when the prototypes were tested," she said. "And when the early versions failed, and when the after-action reports were rewritten so no one upstairs had to answer uncomfortable questions." Silence again, this time heavier. From the far end of the facility, a group of senior officers entered, drawn by the shutdown alert. A general led them, his expression already tight with irritation. "Who authorized a full production halt?" he demanded. Morgan didn't salute immediately. She waited until he was close enough to read her badge. Then she saluted. "Colonel Ava Morgan," she said, "Acting Director, Joint Strategic Weapons Command." The general's face changed instantly. Authority drained from his posture, replaced by calculation. "Acting Director?" he repeated. "As of 0600 this morning," Morgan replied, "confirmed by the Secretary of Defense." She lowered her salute. "I'm here because this weapon is scheduled for live deployment in less than 60 days, and because no one in this building is willing to say out loud that the numbers don't match the reality." The general glanced at the missile, at the frozen machines, at the engineers waiting for permission to breathe. "What are you ordering?" he asked quietly. Morgan exhaled once, a full diagnostic rollback, thermal stress testing under worst case parameters, and a redesign of the stabilizer ring. "That will push delivery." "I know exactly what it will push," Morgan interrupted, "and I'm willing to own that delay." She stepped back, reclaiming the center of the room. "Because I won't sign off on a weapon that looks perfect on paper and fails when people's lives depend on it." No one argued. No one could. For the first time since the program began, the facility wasn't answering to deadlines, budgets, or political pressure. It was answering to someone who had seen the cost of getting it wrong. And this time, the room understood she wasn't here to inspect. She was here to decide. The missile never launched, not that day, not the next, and not for the reasons the public would eventually be told. Inside Site Atlas, the lights burned late into the night as diagnostics ran under conditions no simulation team had ever dared to authorize. Heat chambers pushed beyond safe margins. Electronic warfare interference scrambled guidance systems. Structural stress tests bent tolerances until metal screamed under pressure, and Colonel Ava Morgan stayed. She stood behind engineers hunched over glowing screens, listened without interrupting, asked questions that cut straight through assumptions. When someone said, "That shouldn't happen," she replied, "But it did." By the third day, the data stopped arguing. The stabilizer drift didn't fail loudly. It failed quietly, slow enough to pass inspections, subtle enough to escape thresholds, deadly enough to matter. Under extended thermal stress, the guidance system corrected itself again and again until correction became error, a miss by meters at first, then hundreds, then thousands, enough to turn a precision weapon into a liability. The senior engineer sat back in his chair, exhausted, staring at the final projection. "If this had launched," he whispered. Morgan finished the thought. "It would have hit something it wasn't meant to." No one needed clarification. At 0200 hours, Morgan called for a closed briefing. Only 6 people were allowed in the room. No recording devices, no aides, no legal observers, just rank, responsibility, and consequence. The general spoke first. "You were right," he said, "about all of it." Morgan didn't respond. "The question now," he continued, "is how we explain a 37-day delay on a program already under scrutiny." Morgan finally looked up. "We don't," she said. The room stilled. "We classify the redesign as a routine optimization." She continued, "No press, no hearings, no statements that invite questions we don't want answered." "And the fault?" another officer asked. Morgan's voice didn't change. "It stays here." The general studied her. "You're asking to carry this alone." "I'm asking to do my job," she replied. A long pause followed. Then, slowly, the general nodded. "Approved." By morning, the facility was alive again, but different. Robotic arms moved with new parameters. Engineers worked without rushing. For the first time, no one was pretending perfection existed. Before she left, Morgan walked the assembly line one last time. The missile looked the same to the untrained eye, sleek, flawless, silent, but she knew better. At the exit, the captain who had challenged her on the first day stood waiting. He snapped to attention. "Ma'am," he said, voice steadier now. "Permission to speak freely." "Granted." "I thought you were here to shut us down," he admitted, to make a point. Morgan paused. "I was here to stop a mistake." He nodded, then hesitated. "Why you?" She met his gaze. "Because I was the one who signed off on an earlier version of this system, years ago, before I knew better." The words landed heavier than any reprimand. "I won't repeat that," she added quietly. Moments later, her motorcade rolled away from Site Atlas, leaving the facility exactly as it appeared from the outside. Silent, secret, invisible. 37 days later, the missile passed every test. It never failed, and no one outside a locked room would ever know how close it had come. Some victories don't come with medals. They come with decisions made in quiet rooms, by people willing to stop the shot that was never meant to be fired.